Dropzone Commander is a fantastic game, and the Scourge are my favourite faction. They're such gribbly aliens that their tentacles have tentacles. If you've picked up the 2-player starter set or the excellent Scourge starter army, then you may be wondering what to get next. Well, this Scourge Armour Battlegroup is perfect. In this video, we shall look inside the box. I'll talk a little bit about assembly and painting, and then I'll give you some tactical advice on how to get the best out of these tiny monstrosities. Okay, let's see what we've got. Now you can see that everything comes inside this nice box, safely stored inside some bubble wrap. I shall take things out. Just a quick note about working with resin. You can see here that these two pieces don't quite fit together as snugly as they should. So I'm just going to warm this one up in some hot water. Now that the resin is soft, just slotting them into place and holding it snugly. And when that dries, that will be ready to stick together. It took between an hour and a half and 2 hours to unpack, clean up and assemble the models. If I add in these other models, we've got a Marauder dropship, a Hunter tank and some infantry, you get an idea of the scale. And you can see that with this particular battle group, this armour battle group, you do get some quite chunky miniatures. These really will have some hitting power on the battlefield. To paint my Scourge models, once I've base coated them in silver, I simply use a purple shade. Now I'm using Drukai Violet, which I realise is quite an old school paint, but there's a whole selection of washes and contrast type paints that you could use these days. Just going to put a little bit in there. I've always thinned it down a bit with water, but you could use flow agent if you prefer that. It's just a case of working it into the cracks like so and distributing it evenly over the model so that it will flow nicely into all those lovely details. Here's how the model looks after the first wash has dried. It looks okay, but it's still a little pale. Let me bring in a finished model for my army. You'll see that this has a deeper, richer purple colour. So I'm going to go back and do a thinned second wash all over the Walker. Here are the models after their second coat, and you can see that depth of purple that I was looking for. The next step is to add some gold detailing. I like to pick out these vents. Once the gold has dried, add a little wash. Any kind of red, brown wash will do. After the wash has dried, I like to just line the edge of the vents with silver. You can also add it to any areas that you think might catch the light and you just want to pop a little bit more. So in this case, I'm just going to run a line of silver along the spine of this Walker. For the arthropod, I want to add a flash of colour to these beetle-like wings at the back. So I'm going to paint these raised cells silver and then use a different coloured wash on them. I'm thinking either blue or green. I'm using some Vallejo Express colour for this wash, a little orc skin, generously mixed with the flow medium because I don't want the colour to be too overpowering, but I do want it to look somewhat organic. Just like with the purple, I can always go back in and add a little more if I want the shade to be a bit darker. The final step is to paint the eyes. I want a nice bright red, in this case a bit of game colour bloody red. Then I mix in a little bit of yellow, so that I can create a highlight on each of these hideous alien eyes. And here are the finished models, ready to fight for control of Earth and eat any UCM troopers that happen to get too close. A typical Scourge army contains plenty of glass cannons, relying on a swift, aggressive advance to secure victory. This battle box is a little bit different, containing units that are slower and less nimble, but can take a hit and keep striding forwards. Now, the biggest, baddest boy in this box is the arthropod. It can be built as either an oppressor or a subjugator. Either way, it has real table presence and will draw the attention of any opposing commander. Both versions are tough, and with 8 inches of movement, not quite as slow as you might expect. 9 damage points, 13 armour, and the resilience special rule, which cancels critical hits, means that an enemy will need to focus fire on an arthropod if they want to put it out of action. Whichever version you choose, you're going to need to get close to the enemy, so careful deployment is crucial. As dropships go, the Harbinger is on the slow side, so my advice is to deploy your arthropod somewhere important, an area that will definitely be contested or close enough to enemy models that they can't escape your giant claws. Arming your Harbinger with a mini arc caster is a great way to disable the dropships that might help your enemy to get his units away. The Subjugator, which is the cheaper option, will rob enemy units of an action if they activate within 6 inches of it. This can really mess with your opponent's plans, locking down his units while yours either seize battlefield objectives or rush forward to offer support. The Oppressor swaps this ability for extra close-ranged firepower and the ability to carry a commander. The Beetles in this box can also be built in one of 2 ways. The first option, a pack of Stalker Beetles, are deadly close up and are quite tough for such a small unit. What really stands out is their Electro Web Casters, which hit on a 2+ at energy 12. At only 25 points a model, these punch well above their weight. A unit of these in support of a subjugator that is limiting enemy models to 1 action a round can herald a Scourge feeding frenzy. The other option, a Ravager anti-air beetle, gives you an interesting alternative to the Reaper AA tank. Both units cost 40 points a model. The Reaper is faster and harder to hit and has better close-up anti-air capability. What the Ravager offers is twice the damage points and resilient. Its anti-air is still pretty accurate, has a respectable 6 power, and double the range. Ravagers are comparatively slow, so early game you need to deploy them somewhere with a good line of sight, ideally quite close to the centre of the board. That way they can use their 18-inch range to threaten a large area. Another advantage that they have is that if an enemy unit gets close, they can use their cutting claws to defend themselves. This is quite different from the Reapers, which, if you can get to them, are fairly helpless. Whichever version you choose, the Beetles have Infiltrate 8 inches. Using this ability can be a great way to save yourself 45 points on a dropship. However, you have to be really careful. The Beetles are not fast, and the advantage of starting some way onto the board can be outweighed by the fact they might become stranded. So again, deployment is absolutely crucial, particularly if they're hot-footing it across the board. Continuing the theme of this box, the Laser Walkers are tough but need to get close to the enemy to do their best work. Both versions have paired laser claws, which hit on 2s at energy 10. Very nice. The Ravenor's standoff energy cluster can seem like a rather underwhelming weapon at first glance. It has a range of 12 inches countered, providing 3 attacks at energy 7. However, if any of its attacks roll a 6, then all hits benefit from the Destroyer rule, turning them into automatic criticals. That's a potential 6 damage with 1 attack. Now, it is a swingy weapon, just as likely to cause chip damage as something spectacular, but you never know, something like that could just turn a battle. It's also a great way to intimidate a foe who doesn't want to lose a heavy hitter. The Afflictor Hive Walker has a pheromone spray that's just as unusual. It's an area weapon that isn't likely to cause much damage to units with even moderate armour, but it can slow them down. In a lovely piece of fluff, it summons swarms of insects, creating tough scenery within the area of effect template, which remains on the board till the end of the round. And that is the Scourge Walker Armour Battlegroup. I've already had a lot of fun with it, and I'm sure that you will too. I hope you've enjoyed the video. If so, please consider checking out some of my others. I hope to see you again soon, and until then, keep rolling.